Hi everyone, it's great to be here today because Square is all about entrepreneurs and supporting entrepreneurs, and so this has been a fantastic introduction. People like Jimmy, I think, are very inspiring to think about the sorts of things that you can do with your career. So thank you very much for the introduction there. My name's Sarah Harvey. I'm from a company called Square, which is a fintech company that was started by Jack Dorsey in 2009 in Silicon Valley. And at the moment, we're live in the US, Canada, Japan, Australia, and as of March, here in the UK as well. And I've been with Square for about 10 months to lead our business here in the UK. Let me just grab the presser. So I'm here today to talk about how we work with entrepreneurs all across our business. And I think one of the things that's really interesting about any tech company is the founding story. Very important that you have a fantastic founding story. And ours really starts with this glass faucet. So in 2009, Jim McKelvey, who was an artist and ultimately became Square's co-founder, was making these pieces of art in San Francisco and wasn't able to take card payments to sell them. And he turned to his friend Jack and said, how is it possible that I can have a supercomputer as a phone in my pocket but still not be able to take card payments? And that's really where Square was born, the fact that people were missing out on sales every day. So this was our first prototype. Square created this simple piece of hardware, which you can see plugged into the phone here, which paired with software that was downloadable on a merchant's existing phone or tablet. And almost instantly, it began to level the playing field. Really small businesses that before would have needed to go to a bank to try and sign up, especially they would have had to have been going for 4 or 5 months before they could go and get this, were able to take card payments for the very first time. And from that, our business was really born. It was all about economic empowerment for us, allowing small businesses, startups, people who've been in business for a while but wanted to grow their business to help start up. But we know that it's challenging to start a business. So I wanted you to hear from some of our merchants about the things that affect them when they're thinking about starting up.
The most challenging part of being a small business owner is everything.
Can I do this on my own?
With all of the reward that's yours, all the responsibility is yours.
There's nobody else to blame for your successes or failures, and that's a lot of pressure.
It can really get you down, and it can be very, very hard at times.
So there's lots of surprises and lots of little pitfalls along the way.
Finding your customers and marketing.
Paperwork.
All of your bills.
The capital to grow.
The retail and distribution channels.
Getting licenses and permits.
Just having enough time.
But it's worth it. I love it. I love what I do every day, and I feel really happy that this is what I get to spend my time doing.
That passion carries you through everything that's hard.
That really is the entrepreneurial spirit, is to be able to take a hit and get back up, and that people are willing to take a risk again and again and again.
Persistence, patience, and dedication would be what you need if you want to be successful as a small business. It's just kind of forcing yourself to get up and do it every day, because I'd rather do this than anything else.
So I think you can see from that that people who start small businesses are incredibly passionate about what they do. But what they may not want to worry about is all of the admin that goes behind what you have to do. So for example, if you're a bicycle repair guy, you're not going to want to think about cash flow or have to worry about how you analyze your sales statements every month. And at Square, we typically think about helping businesses in 3 different phases. So first of all, when someone starts a business. Secondly, when they're running their business. And then thirdly, as they're thinking about growing their business over time. And starting a business can be incredibly daunting. I just want to show you one more video of one of our sellers here in the UK called Sam, who runs a flower store, and some of the challenges she faced when she first started up.
Sam Jennings' business has blossomed despite the banks, not because of them. Her florist stall in a busy London station was in a prime location to grab commuters on their way home, except many of them wanted to pay by card, and she couldn't accept card payments.
Getting a card machine so that I could take electronic payments was out of the question, because often it was 3 to 5 days that they would keep your money from the mainstream banks, and they charge so much per month to use the machine, and then you have to pay per transaction, and it just all adds up, and you can't commit to anything like that if you don't know. You can have a guess at what your turnover is going to be, but forecasting is guesswork, and you don't know what the reality is, so you can't sign into contracts that can then cost you your business if you can't pay the banks that could close you down.
And this is where the idea for Square really came from. Talking and listening to people like Sam and understanding the challenges that really affect her business day to day. And we boiled those down into 4 core challenges. So the first challenge that we looked at was the fact that with a traditional payment processing solution, it takes a lot of time and effort to get set up. You have to provide a lot of documentation, potentially cash flow statements, business plans, and lots of idea about yourself. At Square, we use an API to verify your identity with third parties, so you can sign up for an account in just 5 minutes, thereby really removing some of these barriers to getting set up with card payments. The second challenge is the fact that when Sam started up, she hadn't got a business, she got no money coming in, so low-cost setup was really paramount. And as you saw earlier, the way that Square works is taking a very small piece of hardware and pairing it with a device that the merchant already owns, which is great because it means it's a very low-cost setup. It's only £39 to buy the Square Reader, which means you can get going straight away. The third big challenge with card payments is that typically it takes days or sometimes even weeks for you to receive your money in your bank account. If you're Tesco, that doesn't matter. You've got plenty of cash coming in the door and you can manage this. If you're a small business like Sam, where she needs her cash the next day to be able to go and buy more flowers for her stall, that's a real problem. So Square looked at our ability to settle next business day, and that's what we do for merchants here in the UK as well as in all of our other markets. The fourth challenge was really around pricing. It's typically incredibly opaque and very hard to understand exactly what it is that you're paying. So here's a list of some of the fees you pay with a typical card processor. Terminal fees, hardware rental fees, payment gateway fees, compliance fees, minimum monthly fees, reporting fees, in addition to all of your interchange and assessment fees that the various different banks and card networks charge along the way. That's incredibly hard to understand when you're starting up, when what you want to know is, how much money am I going to have left at the end of every month? So at Square, simplicity and transparency of pricing was really, really critical. And the way that we do that is we have one charge for card present payments, so you're doing a face-to-face payment, which is 1.75% here in the UK. And then we have a second charge for card not present payments, so if you're doing an online payment or a telephone order of 2.5%. And that's it. Nothing else to worry about, nothing else to have to understand. There's no monthly fee, there's no minimum commitment that you have to make, which makes it really appealing to people like Sam who are starting up with their own business. So as we started to work on card payments, we also started to think about some of the other challenges and hear from our sellers about some of the other things that they were worried about as they were running their businesses. First up was the fact that much larger businesses typically have massive finance and strategy teams to sit down, plow through the data, and think about what sort of things they should be doing in the future. And whilst all of these small businesses have that data, they're generating that data every day, and it's coming into Square because they're using our point of sale system to record everything, they didn't have the ability to download reports and think about what they wanted to do with it. So we created the home of Square called Square Dashboard, which allows people to see all of their sales data pulled into easy and readable formats. So this allows you to analyze your sales, think about which product is selling best, and get very clear insights, crucially in real time, that can help grow your business. One of the other things that we heard a lot about was employees like this coffee shop that have businesses like this coffee shop that have other employees. So they don't necessarily want to give people access to their full account. So we had to start building in features that allowed just certain employees to have access to do things like refunds, for example. One of the other things that we'd heard a lot about was the fact that the small business ecosystem kept growing, and there were lots of other services that Square doesn't offer that other people did. And so we started to partner with some of these people to ensure that there was seamless flow of information between these services and ours. So for example, in the UK, we partner with 16 other businesses, whether that's accounting or inventory management or restaurant management. And then finally, when we think about businesses as they're growing, one of the biggest challenges for a growing business is access to capital to continue to grow. And one of the things that Square realized very early on was that we had access to a unique data set that a typical fintech company wouldn't, because we have all of the payment transaction history on all of these merchants. And so utilizing that data set meant that we could actually start to offer capital for these businesses. We've got great examples across the US. We've been running this program for about 3 years, and we've lent over $1 billion to small businesses in the US, including stores like Juxtapose, which is a clothing store that managed to open a second location because of the funding that we were able to provide. One of the other things that's really interesting for businesses, particularly here in the UK, when they start to think about growing, is thinking about whether they're an online business or whether they're an offline business or whether they want to be both. And for us, we have seen a real growth in small businesses that have started up in traditional kind of bricks and mortar settings that want to move online. So finding ways that we could offer that was also really important. So at Square, we have an e-commerce API that if you're a small business and happen to have developers on staff, you can tap directly into. But again, it's about our partnership strategy that really helps get people on board with this. So we partner with some of the big kind of drag and drop website builders, people like Wix or WooCommerce or Weebly, to enable people to take payments online with Square as well. We also realized that for some of our more complex sellers, so this could be a larger retailer or a full-service restaurant, that there were points of sales that were very specific for their needs. And again, partnership seemed to be the best option to work with these businesses when they wanted to also use Square's payment technology. So we partner with other people like Vend in the retail sector, people like Touch Bistro in the restaurant sector, so that you can use Square's point of sale as well as, their point of sale as well as Square's payment technology. And what I wanted to spend the rest of the time really thinking about was, how does Square do this? What are the key kind of guiding principles that we use at Square as we think about building out our products for our customers? The first thing is insights. The second piece is really around the design, both of our hardware and our software. And then the third thing is around automation, something that I'm sure if you work in tech, you hear a lot about at the moment. So firstly, around insights. This is absolutely core to the way that we think about planning at Square. Last year, we used a framework by Clayton Christensen called Jobs to be Done to think about what the kind of causal drivers of people using our products are to really help us understand what additional things we need to develop. And it allows us to go above and beyond the traditional kind of focus groups or survey data to really understand what drives our customers. There's a great article that came out today on TechCrunch, which talks about the number of entrepreneurs that have an idea for a product, but don't really think about the customer base that's driving it underneath. And I think with the framework that we use to drive all of our strategy for the company, we really managed to avoid some of those issues. The second thing then is around design. And the principles of consumer-grade design in a business-to-business environment is really important at Square. So whether that's our software, where it's important because of the nature of our customers, it needs to be really intuitive and easy to use because we're asking so many different types of businesses to work with us. You could be a plumber, you could be running a coffee shop, and those people look very different and have very different abilities to use software. One of the things we really like is that lots of our customers tell us how easy our software is to use, that when they have new staff start, they often get them to start on the till because our software is easier to learn than any other part of their job is going to be. And then from a hardware perspective, design is also really important, not just from a functional perspective, but also aesthetics. A lot of the businesses here in the UK tell Square that they really want to work with us because they're fed up of working with payments companies that have terminals that look like a kind of Casio calculator from the 1980s. And Square definitively does not look like that. And then the final piece is automation. And this is really what underlines our ability to serve millions of customers around the world without a workforce to match that size. So just as in the rest of the industry within fintech at the moment, AI, and more specifically machine learning, are very core to what we're able to do. One of the major reasons we're able to get someone to sign up for an account in 5 minutes is because of the way we use machine learning in our risk modeling. So if a seller tells us they're a coffee shop when they sign up, we have no proof that they're a coffee shop. But we know through millions of other types of transactions of existing coffee shops what size the transaction should be, the time of the transaction, the typical sort of payment. And we can then look for specific patterns. If we see something, if the algorithm sees something suspicious, it can flag that for human intervention and allows us to manage our risk much more effectively and scale to lots more businesses much quicker. We also use this to think about how we serve our customers from a support perspective. So at Square, lots of people take face-to-face payments. If they suddenly stop taking face-to-face payments and switch to manual payments, we're able to proactively prompt, do you need a new Square reader? Do you need tips about how to get your Square reader working again? And actively reach out so that they don't have to reach out to our support team to talk to us about what the issues are. Some of our newer products, like Square Capital that I mentioned earlier, which is available in the US at the moment, the small business lending product, really simply wouldn't be viable without machine learning. So at Square Capital, you cannot apply for a loan. We offer a loan to you. And we do that because we have the real-time payments data set to be able to understand what merchants would be suitable. So that when we make an offer to you, that preliminary underwriting process has already happened in the background without a seller needing to give us any additional information. This means that we can make sure that once they've accepted an offer, the money can be in their account within 24 hours and enables them to really focus in on growing their business and not having to worry about filling in forms and applying for a loan in a traditional fashion. So at Square, one of the key things for us has really been about thinking through customer insights and understanding from our customers, listening to our customers, what it is, what the challenges are that face them in the day-to-day world, and how we can then apply technology to help them with those business challenges. Thanks.
You've had quite an eclectic career, from the civil service to management consultancy in the US, the UK, in Africa. What was it that drew you to Square?
I think it's a good question. I've definitely done a lot of different things in my career. I think for me, one of the big things with Square was I'd lived in the United States, and it has huge brand presence there. Even though it's a B2B business, actually there's a huge amount of consumer resonance. It's a very iconic brand. So I definitely knew the brand before I came on board. But I also think Jack is inspirational. He's obviously had incredible success with one technology company. But the amount of passion he puts into the idea of economic empowerment and making sure that that drives through the whole of the business was really, really interesting. I also think for me, the third thing coming in brand new to the fintech industry was coming to a business that has so many female leaders. It's relatively rare within fintech and certainly financial services to have so many women. And for me, that was really interesting as well.
Okay, so you've joined from Tough Mudder, where you were Chief Operating Officer. Mm-hmm. So how does
a little bit different. Actually, very different businesses in many respects, certainly on the surface. But the actual job itself is relatively similar. So when I first joined Tough Mudder, we'd never held an event in the UK. No one had heard of the brand. People thought I was mad that I was leaving to go and electrocute people in a field. And for those of you who don't know Tough Mudder, it's a muddy obstacle course run. It wasn't just kind of sadism.
Begins with a skip full of ice cubes.
It does, yes, it does. But one of the interesting things was the fact it was an American brand, and working out how to build that brand in another country, think about the things that were relevant to the customers, is exactly applicable to what we're doing at Square. I think, though, that what is interesting from a kind of an entrepreneurial bent is that the financial services industry is incredibly complex, and understanding the kind of the backdrop of payments is definitely complex. But one of the things that I found is that there are a huge number of experts in the UK and in London who you can rely on to kind of learn more about the industry and get up to speed.
Yes, so Square has obviously been a huge game changer in the mobile payments industry. In the UK, what kind of trends are you seeing emerging in fintech?
I mean, I think there are a whole number of different areas. And I think one of the key things, obviously from a legislation perspective, is that in Europe there is the sexily titled Payment Services Directive 2, a piece of legislation coming through, and then also open banking legislation here in the UK. And I think what that does is creating an API platform to allow any business to pull out financial information if the customer asks them to, which really creates an awful lot of opportunity for fintechs, particularly here in London, because the open banking legislation is coming first. So I think that's one big piece that we're seeing in fintech. And then I think the second is something that I kind of touched on earlier with automation. Machine learning and AI businesses in the UK are known worldwide for their strengths, and I think that the increase of application within traditional businesses as well as fintech will continue to grow.
Exciting times.
Absolutely.
So what's next for Square? What will the next 12 months bring and beyond?
Well, here in the UK, we have only been live for just over 3 months, so there's a lot of work we still need to do in terms of building our brand and growing our business here. I think more broadly, as a company, we're definitely looking at some of the big new trends that are coming out in the fintech space. So things like cryptocurrencies, which I'm not an expert on, but something that we're definitely looking at. And more broadly for the industry as a whole, I think it's continuing to see this move towards a kind of an open platform. So lots of partnerships and really allowing other people to play with the data.
Yeah, having lived in the US myself and moved back to the UK, it did kind of feel like moving back to the dark ages, lacking in Square. So I'm excited for it. Thank you very much, Sarah.